Welcome to the 3-0 show, part of the Athletic Baseball Show. It is Thursday, October 19th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Britt. The band is all here. We've got two great LCS series in progress. We'll talk about those two matchups as things stand going into Thursday's game. We also have an interview. Eno sat down with Iván Rodríguez. We'll have that later on in this episode. And we had a surprising departure with Kim Ng leaving the Miami Marlins earlier this week. Britt wrote a great story about it, so we'll dig into that here in just a few minutes. But let's begin in the ALCS. The Astros pull to a 2-1 series deficit with a big Game 3 victory. People were wondering, were the Rangers ever going to lose in the postseason? Turns out, yes, they can, but no one expected the Astros to go away quietly. Now, a lot of ground to cover here. Cristian Javier pitched really well again last night. 2 earned runs over 5 2/3. His postseason career numbers are ridiculous. I was looking at those this morning. 43 1/3 career postseason innings, 60 Ks, 22 walks, 18 hits allowed. That is an absurdly low number of hits in 43 innings and change. 2.08 ERA, a whip below 1, 0.923 whip. It's kind of similar to what Javier did in the regular season in 2022, but given how much he struggled at times throughout 2023, this performance in the playoffs is a bit surprising to me because I thought we were starting to see some of the wheels fall off. We're starting to see teams figure him out a little bit. And maybe as a regular starter over multiple seasons, there was a way to actually hit this guy. But it looks like he is back to that elite sort of level. And I'll start with you on this one. Like fluctuations in performance from a guy that we know has good stuff. Like, what do you make of these varying highs and lows from Cristian Javier, who was so good again on Wednesday night?
Well, he's a 2-pitch pitcher, and I think what we've seen is that over the course of the season, the shape of his fastball really changed, and he lost almost 2 inches of ride on that pitch. And this is a pitch that isn't going 95 or 96 like it was before. It's more like 93, 94. And so it's really important that it jumps up on the hitters. It's also important because he's a 2-pitch guy. If one of those pitches is not as good as the other, it's not like he can go depend more on the curve or the change. He does the curve sometimes, but it's really a fastball slider package. And what we didn't quite see that was under the poor numbers in the latter half of the season was he was getting that ride back slowly. And so yesterday and in the playoffs, he's had the best ride on his fastball that he's had all season. I don't know how he did it. That'd be something I'd ask if I had the chance with him, but I suspect it has something to do with small things like hand position because his release point is slightly different. Anyway, he mechanically found something. I don't doubt that he's a good postseason pitcher. I think one of the things that makes you better at something is repeated practice at something. I remember back in the day, everyone said Barry Bonds was not good in the postseason. He got a little more practice at it, and then he blew through that 2002 postseason like it was wet paper. So I think, Javier is a good postseason pitcher because he's a good pitcher, and he's got a lot of practice at the postseason.
I love the wet paper analogy, I'm thinking about it now. Yeah. I thought the story, and I'm in Arlington for those who are listening to this and not seeing the shady backdrop of my courtyard hotel.
That's just how you decorate at home.
Yeah, super fancy, super drab. But walkable to the stadium, which is my number one goal in the playoffs. Everyone made such a big deal about Max Scherzer, and we will get to him. But I thought the real story was Javier holding down a Rangers lineup that has been otherworldly in the playoffs. I mean, you look at it, and they didn't have there was a no-hitter going for quite a while. We were like, oh my God, are we going to write a no-hitter story? That's how dominant he looked. And then, of course, I think it was right around the 5th inning. They get the hit. They very quickly get the 2-run home run, and it becomes like, different game a little bit. But I was so impressed with the way he was able to handle a lineup that 1-9 is incredibly dangerous. I mean, Justin Verlander after game 1 talked about it. Like, you can't go into this as a starting pitcher and say, here's the pocket I want to focus on. There are no pockets in the Rangers lineup. All you have is just deep guys 1-9. And I think when you're in the postseason and every pitch takes so much more out of you, every pitch seems to be high stress, to watch Javier do what he did and really set the tone for that game. Yes, the Rangers came back in certain points, but this is a team, guys, that had only trailed 1 inning of the entire postseason. they trailed the entire game last night. They never led. So, as soon as they scored 3 runs in the second inning, that was it. So I think Javier was the story of that game. And we can look at Max Scherzer and debate, whether he was rusty, and he was just very un-Max Scherzer-like in his post-game press conference. But to me, the story of this game was what Javier was able to do on the mound in a game that really was an elimination game for Houston, right? You can't go down 3-0. Now we have a series. I thought last night if Texas won, this may end in Arlington. Now, guys, I'm looking at flights to Houston. This is probably going 7.
Tell me a little bit about that postseason thing. I missed the postseason, the post-game thing with Scherzer because I had some bedtime duties.
Yeah. So Scherzer, who I covered in DC every day for 2 years, and I'm still live in the area. So, I was around a lot even before. Then he goes to the Mets, and he's, in my opinion, one of the most accountable pitchers in baseball. I was fully expecting him last night to say, I have to be better. I'm the reason we lost this game. But instead, he was like, well, I'm taking positives. I'm not worried about any negative stuff. I am just focused on what's ahead. And I was thinking about it, and he didn't deter from that. Like, he got asked the same question 40 times and was still like, nope, there's some bad in here, but I'm focused on the good. I'm not beating myself up. I thought it was a good outing. And I'm like, wow, this guy gave up 5 runs over 4 innings. Max Scherzer, that I know, that I covered every day, would have been a little more critical of himself. Then I was heading up to the press box, and I was thinking, he has to think this way right now, I think, because it's survival, because he's going to get a chance to pitch again, whether that's in the bullpen or starting a game on short rest. They need him again. So I think his mentality has to be, I wasn't crisp, the slider wasn't there, but the fastball was, and I'm going to be needed. So I have to focus on the positives and not wallow in the fact that I wasn't Max Scherzer yesterday. So I think that the message he sent was a clear message to the media. Like, I asked him, what are the positives, Max? And he said, well, I don't want the Astros reading about the positives. So like, in his mind, this was definitely a play of, I need to present this positive front. I'm not going to comment on what was positive, but I need this to get out that Max Scherzer felt good. Max Scherzer had more in the tank. Max Scherzer believes that, he is still productive and capable, because the alternative, I think he thinks, would have given the Houston Astros an edge.
And so he's thinking, like you're thinking, this is going to go 7. I'm going to pitch again. Let's go. I messed up the first one, but I don't want to talk about that, because this is more about what happens the next time I get out there. And if you do look at the numbers, and I watched the start, I agree with you that, like, there were some positives. Getting back up to 94, sitting 94 was one of his better velos of the season. And when he could actually, he was spotting the fastball well too. There was something weird with the slider. He just couldn't command the slider. And the breaking balls were in the dirt, and he hit Yordan Alvarez with a breaking ball in the foot, and like the slider wasn't there. If you look at his whiff rate on his slider, it was the lowest whiff rate on his slider all season. It was like maybe there's 1 or 2 games where it was worse. So that's really where he was missing something, was that slider. So yeah, maybe that's something you can do in a bullpen session, is just work on the slider, or maybe he just thinks it's going to be better next time out.
Yeah, I wonder, how granular you have to go to find those successes. Is a case where the fastball stuff numbers, in your pitching plus model, were those back to previous norms? Because Scherzer's been more inconsistent this year than I would have expected. I thought one of the benefits of the Mets initially having him, and similar to Justin Verlander's, when you have these guys who've been around as long as both Scherzer and Verlander have, they find ways to adjust course when something isn't working. So that's been the surprising part of the struggles for both of those guys for me, is that I thought they'd be able to adjust a little more quickly. This was after a long layoff for Scherzer too. I mean, that's definitely a factor that needs to be brought back to the table. It wasn't like he pitched 5 days ago and then turned in this sort of start. But you start thinking about where the series is going. I'm with Britt. I don't think this one's ending in 5. So we're probably going to see Max Scherzer pitch again before the series is over. More travel. Hey, I don't have to travel. I'm all for the series all being as long as possible.
We've had too many short series already.
I've been in Texas for a while. I was here last series too. I've been in a Lone Star State for a while.
That's okay.
I like Texas. Arlington could use a couple more food spots. Really. IHOP, Six Flags, and the stadiums.
Six Flags. Is that
Yeah.
where the one, there was a person a few years ago that bought the all you can eat Six Flags card and they ate like hundreds of meals at Six Flags? Remember that story? That was nuts.
Probably because I'm
It's not
having trouble
food.
finding something not fried in this state. So
Would
Yeah.
not recommend.
That's not food you'd want to eat on an everyday basis. I think it was a guy. This guy got his money's worth, like for sure.
Yeah,
But
he
at the
did.
same time, like there was a cost to eating all of that food from Six Flags. To Britt's point about the Rangers lineup, I mean, the depth of this lineup has been a strength all season. Josh Young being at the bottom third of the order just blows my mind because I see so much ceiling for him. There's already present value. This is a guy that's a mid-20s home run hitter this season, and he's probably going to get better. He's probably going to bring that K rate down over time. He's probably going to walk a little more over time. To me, he's more of a middle third of the order hitter. I could see Josh Young becoming the equivalent of Austin Riley in Atlanta. I could see him being that kind of player for this team going forward. So to have a guy like that in the bottom third of the order, that's really nice to have right now. Nathaniel Lowe hits low in the order right now. Part of that's they're getting more mileage out of some guys, having healthy Mitch Garver, and then Jonah Heim hitting the way he's been hitting throughout this season. That's been a big part of the story. And this is what I think great teams consistently have. They have a lineup with like no more than one easy out. The Astros, we always pick on Martin Maldonado for being that guy over the course of the season. Numbers don't look that good. But the one thing Maldonado does offensively, he can actually hit a home run every now and then. He actually has a little bit of thump. You make a mistake against Martin Maldonado, he can punish you for it. Of course, he adds a ton of value behind the plate. That's why he has the job. That's why he's there. But the strength of this Rangers team is being capable of out-hitting some of the flaws with the pitching. And I'm wondering if we're going to see those flaws start to reveal themselves more the longer this series goes on. The question I have about Game 4, it's Jose Urquidy versus Andrew Heaney. What's the sweet spot for Andrew Heaney's workload in Game 4 for the Rangers to get the win in this matchup? Like, what do you think needs to happen for Heaney specifically for this to go well for Texas?
4 to 5 innings. That's what they were hoping Scherzer would get. And he did go 4. He just gave up 5 runs and kind of buried them a little bit early. But I think they're going to try to match the playbook they had when Heaney started that game in Baltimore. And they were able to win that game. Obviously, they swept Baltimore. And they did that by getting multiple innings from guys, right? So I think you're going to see, like, Dane Dunning is going to probably be in this game, right? And, Bradford, you're going to look at, like, how much can we extend guys? Because you have another game coming up. You have a 5 no matter what. You have a game tomorrow. But you have an actual starter that would go tomorrow's game. So I think that they're going to probably try to empty this bullpen here because if you're Texas, this is a big must-win game. And last night, I was waiting on pitching coach Mike Maddox because I wanted to talk to him about Scherzer. And I never got him because they were in this huge meeting, the coaches like kind of huddling together, figuring out this exact thing. How are we going to get through Game 4 and give us a chance to win, right? And there's not really an easy path. But I think if Heaney can go 2 times through the order and keep them in the game, they'd sign up for that in blood.
Was the last game Andrew Heaney for 3 2/3 and Dane Dunning for 2?
Yes.
That's sort of what I'm looking at here. So, I mean, that's obviously the blueprint. I think, if it's just 3 and 2, that might be okay. I think what they're doing is that, they really want to be slimmed down. The guy that they don't want to pitch anyone worse than is Cody Bradford, right? Like they would rather just pitch Leclerc, Sabors, and Chapman for the end of this game. And so that's why getting to 6 or even 5 2/3 puts them right there. But Cody Bradford is going to be the guy that, comes up first after Dane Dunning if they don't make it far enough. And if Cody Bradford doesn't get it done, then they have to go to the pitchers they went to last night that they don't want to go to much in this series, which is like, Chris Stratton, John Gray didn't quite seem to have it. Will Smith, did not look good. So, a lot of those guys they're trying to avoid using right now.
But the key was they didn't use any of the A relievers in the loss in Game 3. When you play on 3 consecutive days, that's extremely valuable because in a closer game that you're losing, you can throw those guys in Game 4 and throw them again in Game 5 because you've got an eventual off day before you get to Game 6, right? So that's a huge part of the calculus. So, well, at least this game wasn't so close that we threw all those guys because that would make this even more difficult. Or you'd be throwing guys on 3 consecutive days, which you can do, but you start to lose something performance-wise in a lot of cases when you use relievers that way. And I think this is the other part of the Rangers we've wondered about. How will their bullpen hold up against top-level lineups? So that's definitely something to watch. And Britt,
Houston
I'm jealous,
used Presley.
Britt.
Why are you jealous?
I'm just jealous that you're there for this. This was a great. I mean,
it is fun.
This is a great series. We saw that Leody Taveras' catch was incredible,
fun. And everyone and it just
Michael
lit up
Brantley.
the stadium.
Michael Brantley's was ridiculous too. That to me was a huge shifter. That ball gets down. The game was like still kind of close at that point in time. That was a huge.
And he's not a good defender. Sometimes when when a not good defender does something good defensively, you're like, yes.
Yeah. He like flies under the radar on that Astros team. I know he's really reticent, like with the media, doesn't really enjoy being in the spotlight at all. But I think like low key, he's a glue guy there in that clubhouse for them.
Also a hits guy. I mean, he's a high contact guy where, just keeps the lineup moving sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the aerial cam shot of the Taveras catch in particular, it gave you more perspective of how hard the ball was hit. Like, Yordan Alvarez hits the ball hard pretty much all the time anyway. But to me, it highlighted how difficult that play was. Taveras made it look so easy. And then he just calmly flips off his hat, looks at the card like next pitch, like didn't even flinch, and then glanced up at the scoreboard, watched himself, looked like Superman, and then just kept on playing, which very smooth, very cool, very great, very like amazing catch.
The wall height also contributed a little bit to that play, which is cool. I'm not
wall
trying to take away from
should
the play.
Be that way.
That's a good wall height. I like that wall height.
Wall heights should be variable depending on the level of athleticism of people on the field. So if the 3 of us are playing wiffle ball, the wall height should be such that any of the 3 of us can actually rob home runs. So the wall is the exact right height for that play. That's proper ballpark dimension, stadium design. Awesome play. Just didn't lead to anything for the Rangers. It kept them in the game. I think it kept that game. It could have been a turning point if they're able to get a rally. Shifting the focus over to the NLCS. That's the early game of the 2 for Thursday, by the way. Brandon Pfaadt has the tall task of trying to quiet this Phillies lineup. And Brandon Pfaadt is a rookie that we had pretty high expectations for going into this season. There have been some flashes of promise, and there are reasons to believe long-term Brandon Pfaadt could be a very good big league starter. But how do you slow down a juggernaut like the Phillies offense when it's just firing on all cylinders? Ranger Suarez going for the Phillies in this one, by the way. Where do you even begin, Britt? Like, what's the game plan? How do you try and just stop the momentum of a Philly team that looks like it's destined to go back to the World Series?
They do look like a team of destiny. I mean, I think the easiest thing, if you're Arizona and you're finally playing at home, is to score early, because the Phillies, like Texas, have led for much of this postseason. So they haven't had, and Rob Thompson talked about this in the TBS interview, is that it just changes the psyche, right? There's not a whole lot of pressure on them. So I think if you're Arizona and you jump out and you put some runs on the board, maybe that does give you a little more confidence. I mean, there has been not really much to feel good about at all if you're Arizona about this series. So they kind of have to do what Houston did last night. Jump out to a lead early and just kind of hang on. Like, keep putting those tack-on runs on and then find a way to make this a series, because it looks right now like Philly is going to steamroll their way to the World Series. They absolutely look like a team of destiny. Their lineup is ridiculously good. And even today, it doesn't look like it's going to be this great, matchup where Arizona really has a chance to be the stopper here. So I think their only chance is to jump on Suarez, force them to go to that pen early, and then kind of ride that wave. What is sad, though, guys, did you hear this? That ticket prices have plummeted in Arizona, and that you can get in for like $16. First off, it's a 2 p.m. game, which if I'm an Arizona fan, I'm mad about. Like, really? They can't have a night game and then an afternoon game? I'm in Texas. The game's at 8 o'clock Eastern. You couldn't make this game an hour early or whatever. You could still have made that game a little bit later. I don't know. I have a real problem with that. Like, give their fans a chance to celebrate. It is a work day, and it is at 2 o'clock local time. Like, what?
If there is a night game tomorrow and they're down 3-0, like who's going to go to that? You're kind of recapping them a little bit.
I know. It's like, couldn't they have been the late game tonight? Tonight is not a clincher. Right. Maybe they thought it was going to be a clincher. but this never screamed
No, it
of
couldn't have
Texas
been a
is going to
clincher.
sweep.
It couldn't have been, but they're flipping the order for the games for Friday, so they get they get a later game tomorrow.
It could have been if Texas won last night. Tonight could have been a clincher, so maybe that's.
Oh, you're talking about the
ALCS
series. I thought you were talking about the other one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because I was wondering, like, why wouldn't you give this the early game, right, and give Arizona a night game?
Well, the markets
starts at 5.
Markets are bigger, although the Philly market is the biggest market in there, and then Houston is the second one, and then Texas is third, and Arizona's fourth. I don't know.
They're flipping the order for Friday, though. They're playing the Arizona Philly game in the later spot, and they're playing the
and that's dumb because that game may never happen.
Texas games isn't that game tomorrow? The game tomorrow night is early.
Yeah. I'm looking at Savant. They've got a 4:07 start time on that game in Texas for Friday.
And that may the Arizona one may never happen. So if that happens, they would flip the Texas Houston game. They push it to the later slot. They did this before.
Breaking the fourth wall, man. Like moving from the West Coast back to Central, not being used to that, having a kid, working with people on each of the two coasts, one of whom is traveling, and then looking at websites that automatically adjust for the time zone you're in when everything else is listed on Eastern time is absolute insanity. I don't know what time anything actually is. So I try to clarify which zone as much as possible.
Friday's not going to switch. The Friday that would be the fourth game.
No.
But in any case, it is a little bit rude to Arizona. And I just want to give some love to Arizona because we could just declare that over like most people and not even give them any love. I love watching Corbin Carroll. I think he's an amazing young star.
Yeah.
And I do think that Brandon Pfaadt is maybe better than given credit since he moved on the rubber to a more extreme spot on the rubber. He's taking more advantage of a bit of a sideways arsenal that he's got. It's not great, north-south, which is what most teams are looking for, but he's got good sideways movement. Since he's moved on that, he's been a slightly better than league average starter. And he does throw a curveball, and that's the only pitch the Phillies have been below average against in the playoffs is the curveball. So fill them up with curveballs and hope for some strikeouts. I don't know. I think he needs to go 3 or 4. They don't really have do they want to go to Ryan Nelson? They don't really have that depth in the starting rotation where they can be like, yes, just give us 3 scoreless and we'll win this game. So it's going to be hairy. I think it'll be a high scoring game, and it's going to be on Arizona's bats to wake up a little bit.
But they can do it. I think the matchups being against Wheeler and Nola in the first 2 games, not hitting those guys isn't necessarily a sign that you're not going to hit in the whole series. This is a great get well spot. Ranger Suarez much more hittable than those top 2 Philly starters. This is an Arizona lineup that went off in that series against the Dodgers and scored plenty of runs against the Brewers in the wild card round before that. I mean, the 4 home runs in an inning, that was unreal watching that play out. I know I wasn't on the show last week, but that was an incredible inning. 4 home runs in 1 inning for the Diamondbacks in that game against the Dodgers. Yeah. So there's a lot to like about this Arizona team. And I think it's forgotten because of just how slanted the first 2 games, the second game was just out of control. But this is a good team that could bounce back in a big way. I'd like to see them do it because the series hopefully goes at least 6. Hopefully. I don't want this to be a quick series. I think there are a lot of people out there who haven't watched Arizona much this season prior to the playoffs, so it'd be a shame to see them disappear quickly.
I don't want to learn too much from the playoffs because I find them to be pretty unpredictable, and I think we overlearn from the playoffs. One thing that happens to us when in terms of our memories is that we remember things that have emotions tied to them better. It's part of how our brains work. So, what happens in the playoffs, we remember it better and we spend more time thinking about it and we try to make sense of it in a way that I'm not sure we should. But one thing that I would say is that if you look at payrolls, yes, lower payroll teams make the playoffs, but if you look at who wins the World Series, they're almost always top 10 in payroll. And if there is something that happens in the playoffs, is that adding those free agents, adding those expensive, stars to the top of a good core can be the difference. If you look at the Phillies versus the D-backs, like let's say you put a $300 million, free agent type guy on the D-backs. Let's say they had Manny Machado at third instead of Evan Longoria, or let's say they had one of these big pitchers in the rotation that they could add to Gallen and Kelly. That would be a really important thing right now. So it's a great team, and I've seen some people be like, yeah, but your team is $100 million more expensive than ours, so in your face. I don't know.
There is some weird discourse right now, like about the efficiency of payrolls, and if you were a fan of a team,
that's
you want your team
drummer.
to spend.
Who's it? It's the drummer for a band. What was it? Did you see that?
What?
Oh my God! I wish I had the band name.
What are you
the
talking
drummer
about?
for a band that is a famous band. I forgot the name of the band. Sorry, it's going to be useless. But a drummer for a band was like, yeah, our team is younger and cheaper, and your team is $130 million more expensive. And
who cares?
Yeah, right.
I'm not paying those guys.
Not my money, not my problem.
Yeah.
The biggest heist front offices have pulled off over the last decade is getting fans to believe that like low payroll and prospects are the way to go. Like efficiency is
or
king.
Just like something worth rooting for, or something.
I would like to introduce you to Dave Dombrowski.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that, and it's like, yeah, look who actually wins most years. Yes. Not every year, but
look at the most
years.
Winningest executive. Dombrowski's a Hall of Famer.
Like the Rays are a lesson in like how to not be bad during the regular season, but they're not a lesson for how to win the World Series. And too many teams think that.
Yeah. Well, see, but the thing is you can sell to many fan bases that playing October baseball consistently is good enough, and you can convince people. You can say, and look, mathematically, it's like playing a bunch of hands of blackjack.
Yes,
all you gotta do is get there.
It convinces me to some extent to get to the postseason.
I'd rather my team wins and be bad for 5 years, win the whole thing. No one remembers like, oh, we keep losing on the wild card round. Ask the Twins what it's like to keep going to the postseason and losing, if that's a cool thing.
Okay. Perfect segue. Are the Miami Marlins, formerly the Florida Marlins, are they a successful franchise in the grand scheme of things? Not just this current iteration. Of course, they're in the
got those wins.
They got those
Never
2 titles,
won a division,
and then they burn it down. Now, like that's an extreme version of what you're talking about, Britt. The fire sale is just horrendous for fans. Because like we have a good team, and now we're giving up, and that's kind of different than what you're getting at. I think what you were saying, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that win a title, miss the playoffs, but trying to make the playoffs. You'd rather have that than 5 playoff appearances with no title. Is that what you were getting at?
I think you can ask Cub fans, like, would they trade in 16 for 5 more playoff appearances? And the answer would be no. Right?
Yeah, it's because they went 100 years without a title.
Same thing in DC, though, right? Like, I just think fans are okay dealing with some down years if they know that you're going to try to be good when it's time to try to be good. That's how I feel. Maybe people disagree. That's how I feel. The Marlins is an extreme. We win the title in 2003. We're going to be bad and not get to the playoffs in a full season for another 20 years.
Yeah. And then 2020 was an expanded playoff field. So we don't even have to count that appearance because 16 teams got in the playoffs that year.
Yeah,
so this is the first time they get back. And that's the context of all of this is what made the news. And I talked about it on Rates and Barrels a little bit on Monday. And at the time, all we had was the statement that Kim Ng released. The news had just broke that Kim Ng declined the mutual option to return to the Marlins. And we're like, okay, like structure of the baseball operations department, is it not having enough people, not having enough money and resources? No. The story came out, Britt. You broke the story. You wrote it. There's a lot more to it than just the usual Marlins stuff. Like this is a person getting completely snubbed after leading a front office back to the postseason effectively for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget, as I wrote, they wanted a president that came in, and really when you write a story like this, stuff comes out after you write the story. Like I heard from people yesterday that were basically like, listen, Bruce Sherman was around the team for maybe 6 weeks all year. He had no actual understanding of who was doing what. He got some bad advice that said, we should hire a president. He said, sounds good. He approaches Kim with this. Kim basically is like, you want someone above me, like to make the real decisions, right? It was just a completely absurd thing. On top of most executives, when they have that kind of a successful season and they're facing a lame duck year, the teams will restructure a contract. They'll rip up that option year and they will say, let's sign you for 3 years, right? Because when she signed her contract, which I am betting is probably the lowest paid GM, if not, she's among the bottom like 3 in terms of paid GMs. When she signed that deal, guys, in November 2020, no one was sure what she was going to do. No one was sure she was going to be successful. So that's a different salary class than what she was able to do this year and bringing that organization to the playoffs, right? And I think people felt good about where that team was at. Skip Schumacher may win NL Manager of the Year. She brought him in. So I think she changed the culture very quickly. And then they didn't appreciate that. It seems like ownership had this huge disconnect where they thought, well, you did a nice job. We're going to just pick up your mutual option. And then we're going to hire someone to really make the decisions. And I don't know anybody who would not be offended by that, who would not think, hey, this is ridiculous. You're stripping me of power and I'm underappreciated. She also wanted to clean out. I mean, there were people there from previous regimes that were not loyal to her vision. There were people trying to undermine her. And
Probably
she was
the person
unable,
who gave Sherman that advice.
Correct. And she was unable to get rid of those people. So if you're going to be GM and you're not allowed to dictate some of your staff heads and you're going to have a president above you and your owner is just going to pick up your option, it became very clear that she wasn't a valued part in his mind of the Marlins. So good for her walking away from a job that it took her 3 decades to get. You know, there's only 30 of these jobs. I think it's just really an indictment on the Marlins. I mean, I had somebody yesterday in that organization text me, there's no question the organization took a large step back already just by losing Kim Ng. So it's unfortunate. This was the coolest thing about the Marlins, the most goodwill they've had in 20 years, and they had to just basically shoot themselves in the foot. All they were required to do was to say to Kim, let's move forward, let's extend you. And they messed that up. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable.
It's a layup, really, for decision making. I think it's hard to understand how out of touch many owners are when it comes to understanding what's really happening within their organizations. Like this is like cartoon Bob's Burgers, Kelvin Fishoder grade stuff. Mr. Fishoder owns everything on Bob's Burgers. And he's out of touch with reality. That's what it feels like this is. Someone gets in his ear and says, you need a president of baseball operations. Who is that person? And what are they actually going to do that we don't do already? It seems like there's just key questions being missed there. And why can't Kim have that job? Like the resume she had, the resume Kim Ng had when she became the GM of the Marlins had 2 baseball careers worth of experience. If you split that resume in 2 and gave it to someone who graduated from the Ivy League 10 years ago, you'd have 2 GMs. That's what you'd have in terms of experience. So the whole thing is completely absurd. I wonder, too, is there another job going into next season? I mean, there are teams with openings. The Red Sox are being very deliberate in their search. They've also been turned down by a lot of people who don't even want to interview for roles there. Is there an opportunity for Kim Ng in Boston or somewhere else in Major League Baseball right away before we get to the 2024 season?
And could she get like a good opportunity? Because even the Boston one has been declined by some people, because what Boston ownership has shown is a little bit like what Sherman has shown, which is like you got 3 years or 4 years to put up or shut up, and put up or shut up in Boston is mostly like title or not. It's not just like make the playoffs and lose in the first round. So, what happens a lot of times in these situations is that, people that have to overcome, certain biases get worse jobs. They get the first job they get is the one job that nobody wants, and like even Dusty, we love Dusty to death. When did he get back in? He got back in after the Astros got cheated. They got busted for cheating,
Nobody wanted the job.
Like, yes, I'd like to be the first one in line for that job, so a lot of times, I just want her to get like a crown jewel job. I want her to get like a legit, like, this is an awesome job. Everybody wanted it and I got a job, that seems like she deserves a shot at something like that.
The Red Sox should be a job like that. It's so strange what they've become. You've had people declining. They even admitted they declined. Brandon Gomes from the Dodgers admitted he declined to interview for the job. Was it Randy Levine not Randy Levine? Thad Levine.
Falvey. Thad Levine interviewed.
Thad Levine is interviewing.
Derek Falvey.
Derek Falvey said
Falvey
no.
turned it down.
So there are, when you get the public knows, those are, I think as an ownership group, you should be like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why did that non-GM decline to interview for our GM spot? That's weird. What are we doing wrong?
Yeah. I'd like for her to be a president somewhere. I think there's a bunch of teams that are looking at presidents because there aren't that many good GM jobs, right? Like, why can't she go to Chicago, be a president? Why can't, Houston's looking at a president. I've heard rumors that Angels might be looking for a president. There's no perfect job. Most of them have warts, but I think she just wants to be in a place where she can make her own decisions and run a team, which she was doing in Miami until they took it away from her.
Yeah. And Miami, that roster is still going to need work. Like, so whoever takes that job over is still taking on something that has work to be done. Like, they made progress this year. The loss of Sandy Alcantara is huge. I think that's something that you look at this rotation for next year and say, yeah, they're young and they've got some guys that have taken steps forward. Lizardo, Garrett, Yuri Perez is fantastic. I made the case back when Perez got called up. They should have been all in right away, and they eventually did. They did make additions. They got some power. They got help in the middle of the order at the trade deadline, and that goes back to Kim Ng. That's making the right adjustments and putting this team in a position to be successful. I don't know. Is it going to be 20 more years before the Marlins go back to the playoffs now? This could be a massive turning point in the wrong direction for a franchise that has spent plenty of time rowing in the wrong direction over the years.
It'd be so much better to have some continuity from year to year and have the person who got them there be working on the team right now. Instead, they're working on finding somebody, instead of, just continuing the work.
Right. And if there was already division between Kim Ng and previous members of other regimes throughout the organization, you're going to have conflict with the new person too. Yeah. At least when you had one person there for a few years, they were at least starting to steer things in the right direction. And now got to go back to the bad place. Sorry, Marlins. It's deserved. It's your owner. It's not your former GM's fault. It's going to be your owner's fault. And this team is bad for a long time. It's a tough place to win because of the division too. That was something we got into on Rates and Barrels. The NL East is tough to be a perennial playoff team, and it's going to get tougher in the years ahead. We are going to go. The episode's not quite over. Before we sign off, just letting you know, we've got Eno's interview with Iván Rodríguez coming up here in just a few minutes. So be sure to check that out. You can find us on Twitter. Britt is at Britt_Drolli. Eno is at Enosaris. I'm at Derek Van Riper. If you'd like to sign up for The Athletic, read all the great stories that Britt and Eno and everybody else on the staff have been putting out, go to theathletic.com/baseball show. $2 a month gets you in the door. The Athletic Baseball Show returns on Friday. Stay tuned for Eno's interview with Iván Rodríguez.
Always got the green light here. Thank you so much, Iván Rodríguez. Sorry for that technical difficulty. Thank you so much for having some time for me today. I wanted to ask you if you're watching the playoffs today and cheering your Rangers on when you're watching.
I really do. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm enjoying seeing the Rangers playing good ball, obviously good pitching, good offense, and basically good hitting. And I think when you have those three things in one thing, you're going to win a lot of ball games. But for me, what I've been amazing the most is the starting pitchers. We got Montgomery the first game, pitched 6+ innings, and then yesterday another 6+ inning again from the starting pitcher. So I think that's the key. And the good news now that we're going to have Max Scherzer now and John Gray coming into to being active this series. So with those four guys, I think it's going to be really good.
When you watch Jonah Heim, who everyone tells me that he has a real reputation as being a good catcher, good defensive catcher. That was the first thing. He's added the offense since. When you watch him, what do you think of in terms of preparing for these? What was like for you as a catcher to prepare for a postseason game?
Very, very, very good catcher. Very smart guy. Studied the game from A to Z. Obviously, he's I watch him when I'm in town in Texas. He's in the media room studying the hitters and doing a good report for the pitchers. And I think that's important for a catcher to to have that part of the game. I think if you talk to a lot of these pitching staff, they love him to be behind the plate because the way he receives, the way he blocks, the way he throws, the way he calls the game, and plus he have a big size behind the plate. So the target is pretty good for the pitcher. So I think he's doing a good job offensively. I mean, when we talk about hitting and defense, I mean, it's unbelievable when you have a guy that almost 100 RBI as a catcher, 20 plus home runs and hitting over 280 as a catcher is great. Even though that he got hurt for 6 weeks during the season, but imagine if
I think he's still hurt.
Imagine if he's still no hurt. Full season, he was probably having an MVP year. But I like the way that he's calling the game, the way he's behind the plate, the calm that he is receiving, and the way the pitchers feel with him behind the plate.
Yeah, with Jonah there and Bruce Bochy managing, the Rangers have left their pitchers in a little bit longer. So we're talking about longer outings from Montgomery, and what we've seen is that Bochy seems to trust his guys. He even said recently, if they're dealing, I'm going to leave them out there. That's something the numbers haven't been able to show. That's part of why the game is changing. Yeah,
I've seen the numbers here from Montgomery's performance the other day. He threw 110 pitches. And Eovaldi throws 108. So that's pretty good. That's what a veteran manager does. I mean, that's why we brought Bochy into our team this year. A guy that knows how to deal with the players, a guy that has been in the playoff a lot of times, a lot of World Series. So he knows what it takes for these guys in the clubhouse to win ball games. So I think with him, and we have to mention, I mean, not too many knows about the job that the front office, the Chris Young, the whole coaching staff, you have to give them a lot of credit because obviously, it's a hard job during the season to put a good team together, put a winning team together. And then when you bring Bochy with Mike Maddox, the pitching coach, back into the pitching rotation is great to happen. And I think that's why these players feels very comfortable with this whole coaching staff because they know what they need to do to win ball games, and also the players play the game hard because they have a manager and the coaching staff that's what they want. You play me hard, I'm going to be fine with it.
But you mentioned 108 pitches, 110. That's long for today's game. We're talking about taking keepers out before that.
In today's game, it's long, but you're talking two veteran pitchers, right? And Montgomery and Eovaldi, that they can go more than that. And coming John Gray is another one that you can go with 150 and 120 pitches to him. I don't know about Max Scherzer now because he's hurt. Right. I don't know how long he's going to go when he's going to pitch the next couple of days. That we need to keep the eye on him because obviously we 2-0 series and we in the good position. And I think we wanted to save him and stay healthy for the World Series. If we move forward, we need him. So
talk to me a little bit about you being a catcher and like, how did you get through that third time through the order? What was different for you when you were playing?
The third time through the order, and for me as a catcher, I will be more aggressive. I will be more like established, more the fastball inside and pitches down away for ground ball, for strikeout. But for me, when you have 2 times that you see that hitter on the plate, you got to go with what with what you start the first time up, the second time up, and then the third time up. He got a pretty much idea how many the breaking ball, how it breaks, the fastball, how fast it is, any of that. And so for me, that's what I going more inside because that's the hardest pitches. That's the hardest pitch for a hitter to keep it fair.
Right.
And a lot of hitters in today's game, they're just dying to the home plate and try to hit the outside part of the plate. And for me, I would like to eliminate that when it's late in the game, because when it's late in the game, you need 90 feet ground balls. You need balls to this side of the diamond, because if it's man in scoring position, second base, that runner is not going to advance. If it's man on third base, less than 2 out, I want a 90 feet ground ball, because I want the third baseman to feel and watch the runner and throw the first base for an out. So that's what the inside pitch is really, really important for me when I was a catcher in those situations.
How amazing has it been to watch the growth of velocity since you were playing? I mean, we keep adding velo every year. What was it like? How rare was it for you to see 98 when you were playing, or 100?
It's amazing to watch these pitchers today, just throwing 98, 100 with no effort. It just let it go. Stronger, I think, is because, the players today, they're taller, they're bigger, they're stronger. Different era. I think these pitchers that you're seeing today, they average 94 to 98 at 100. Starting pitchers 94 to 96, and guys from the bullpen 97 to 103 miles an hour. And so it's amazing. It's amazing to see that, and it's basically because different frame, I think, different bodies, younger, taller, bigger, stronger, different training maybe in the weight room, and that's what they're so strong.
Were you on that team with Joel Zumaya?
Absolutely, I throw in 108.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw 100.
I got the chance to catch him a lot of times. 108.
Did it hurt?
It's coming fast. It's a four seam. It's a four seam. It's not a. I prefer a pitcher to throw two seam, move the ball around, movement, than a four seam 100. But obviously, when you throw 108, it's still coming really fast.
Yeah, they used to do the whole thing on the video screen, the Zoom Maya, and they used to have the whole thing. That was so much fun.
Exactly.
Now everyone throws 100.
Everybody.
Thanks so much for coming by. Just wanted to ask, what you're doing. Was there something are you an owner now? You're an owner, aren't you?
No, basically, no. I'm here in my house in Colombia with the family now. I'm going to be here into the 24, and then I'm going to Puerto Rico for a couple of weeks, but I'm here relaxed.
So you're just the Puerto Rican Winter Leagues. It's just you're just involved in that. You're not an owner.
Yeah, I'm a little bit involved in outside of it, not into it. I advise a lot to the owners. I'm a good friend of Raúl Rodríguez. He's the owner of Caguas team, which is the team that I played for 15 years, win a ball. So I advise him a lot, and obviously, I always spend a great time. Just go there and see, the growth, from the young kids that now are playing the game. They want to become great players, and now see the winter ball from 4 teams from 3 years ago. Now we back to 6 teams. So it's more opportunities for players to play professional baseball in Puerto Rico, so they can be ready for the next season.
And what's this about underwear?
I know. It's great. I just wanted to thank you. You and I, we have fun doing the commercial. Obviously, you are the expert on stats. So whoever wanted to know about stats, Dr. Eno, he knows he's the best doing that. But have a great time doing the commercial, obviously, for the purpose of doing, you and I, we did it is for the testicular cancer, which is a foundation, which is a foundation that we need to keep supporting. Is needed. We need to pay attention checking, go check, see that you okay. I know it's a cure for it, but we got to pay attention because this this cancer situation is very young. It's from 15 to 30, 31 years old. So sometimes you don't feel it or you don't know, but you got to go and check. But anyway, we have a great time. You know, the underwears are really comfortable. What they made it just to, you know, to work in this area so we can feel more comfortable. But
what's that company again?
Sacks.
That's right.
Underwear.
Yeah.
But no, I'm glad to work with you. I'm glad to be part of the Sacks underwear team with you and the guys. They did a nice commercial in Miami, and look forward to continue work together.
All right, and go Rangers.
Go Rangers. Go Rangers. Go Sacks.
Yeah, right. Thanks so much, Iván.
Yeah, you know, thank you, buddy.